Some words should never be said aloud. I repeat this to myself since that night. But they went, and I heard them. And now, no matter how long it goes, I can't tear these words out of my head. They got stuck in me as a berifted barrow too deep to be removed. I tried to pray. I tried to fast. I tried to find comfort in the scriptures. Nothing worked, because some confessions should not have been heard, and that definitely shouldn't. Q. It was almost midnight when I heard the steps on the central nave. Slow steps, dragged, as if each movement cost a decision. The church had been closed for hours. The altar candles had erased alone, and only the smell of burnt wax still floated in the heavy air. I was in the sacristy, guarding the vespertine mass implements, the cassock already hanging in the hanger. The rosary on the oak table next to the open breviary on the page of the day had finished the prayers of the night. I was about to lock everything and go to the parish house when I heard that sound, distant, but of course, steps on the stone floor. I stopped immediately, the hand still holding the side door key. My first thought was that someone had been behind after the last mass, perhaps an elderly lady who fell asleep in the seats, as has happened a few times, or some lost young man, seeking a silent place to think. But something in those steps was different. They were not lost steps. They were decided steps, intentional, as if the person knew exactly where he was going. I went back to the ship through the side aisle, walking slowly. Only the weak lamplight in the entrance illuminated the suspended dust in the air. Banks' shadows stretched the floor like long and twisted fingers. The crucifix on the altar seemed to watch me from afar. The eyes of Christ dipped into darkness. I looked around. Nobody, just silence. I thought I might have imagined that tiredness was preaching me pieces. It was late after all. The cold winter nights always made the church an oppressive, heavier place. The old walls seemed to suck the light. The air was dense, almost palpable. I was about to go back when I heard another sound. A creak, wood against wood, coming from the bottom of the church. Of the confessional, my body froze. Someone had entered, on the penitent side. I was stopped for long seconds, just listening. The cold wind entered the cracks of the tall windows, making the old curtains move like ghosts. The breath came out in small clouds of steam. I felt the cold sweat run down the back of the neck. Even with the cold, I thought of leaving, in pretending that there was no one there, that had heard nothing, locking the sacristy and going out the back door, leaving whoever was there alone with his ghosts. But I couldn't. Something pulled me back, something I can't explain to this day. It was not a duty. It was not obedience to the votes. It was something more primitive, deeper, as if an invisible force was dragging me back, forcing me to enter that confessional, to hear that voice, as if fate was already written, and I was just a piece on a tray that I didn't control. I walked slowly to the confessional. Each step sounded like thunder in my ears. The heart beat too fast. The hands shake lightly as I held the rosary that I always carry in my pocket. I stopped before the door. Across the dark wood and spends for time, I heard a breath, heavy, irregular, as if the person was holding the cry, or trying to gather courage. I took a deep breath and entered. The interior of the confessional was tight, as it always was. Smell of old wood, mold, and something I couldn't identify. Something metallic, strange, that shouldn't be there. I sat slowly on the cracked leather seat, adjusting the purple stole on my shoulders. My fingers found the crucifix hanging on the side wall, and for a moment I just held it, seeking some comfort. On the other side of the grid there was only shadow, absolute silence, a silence that seemed to weigh tons. I waited. The seconds dragged on as hours. He could feel his presence there. Yes, he was a man, I realized for the sound of breathing, but he said nothing, just breathed, bottom, slow, as someone on the verge of a cliff, deciding whether or not to jump. I closed my eyes and did what I always do. I prayed in silence. Father, give me strength to hear. Give me wisdom to guide. Give me compassion to forgive. And then finally, I heard the voice. It was a broken voice, hoarse, as if he had spent whole days without drinking water. Father, and I don't know if I should be here. The voice was loaded with pain. It was not physical pain. It was that deep spiritual pain that erodes inside, the pain of those who carry something too heavy for too long. I leaned lightly forward, my hands on my knee. God is always waiting for us, I said, with the rehearsed calm of decades. It doesn't matter when we arrive, no matter what we bring, he's always here. Silence again. He could hear the sound of the wind outside, howling between the trees of the cemetery next to the church, the distant creak from a poorly closed window, the slow beating of my own heart. So a long sigh, almost a moan. I did something that I shouldn't have done. I had heard these words hundreds of times. Adultery, theft, lies, small betrayals that run the soul gradually, hidden addictions, forbidden desires, impure thoughts. The list was always the same, just the faces, the names, the circumstances. But there was something different in that voice, something that made the air inside the confessional seem denser, harder to breathe. "You can tell me," he said, keeping the neutral pastoral tone. "Here, everything is between you, God and me. What is said here, dies here." I heard a dry noise, maybe his hands rubbing, nervously, then the sound of fabric moving. He should be rummaging in the bench, seeking a position, trying to find the right words. "I lied to my family for years, priest." The voice came out low, embarrassed. "They think I'm a person, good, reliable, someone who would never hurt anyone, a father of a family, a dedicated husband, a good man." A long pause. "But I'm not that." The voice trembled. "I never went. I was silent, waiting. It's always like this. The first confession is never the true one. It is just warming. The attempt to test the waters to see how far they can go without completely collapsing. People are afraid to reveal everything at once. They prefer to go slowly, layer by layer, as those who take a dirty outfit with disgust from oneself. "What did you do?" I asked, bass, almost in a whisper. I heard his breath accelerate, faster, more desperate, as if the air was missing, then more silence. Silence that stretched so much that I thought he had given up. That was going to get up and leave, leaving everything in half, as some do. But then, he said, I had an affair." I nodded, even though he knew he couldn't see me through the grid. "With whom?" I asked, keeping my voice calm without judgment. "With someone in the family." My body froze. The temperature within the confessional seemed to fall 10 degrees suddenly. It wasn't my wife." He swallowed dry. He could hear the saliva down with difficulty in his throat. "It was her sister." Silence. "For 3 years. In the afternoons of Thursday, when she came to help with the children, no one ever suspected. My wife always went to shop. The kids were at school and we were alone." The words came out quickly now, run over, as if it needed to spit everything before losing courage. It started with a look, then an accidental touch. Then it was no longer accidental, and then suddenly it was happening. In the guest room, in the living room when everyone slept, once even in the car, parked 2 blocks from home. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I had heard confessions like this before. Infidelity, betrayal within the house itself, secrets stored with invisible padlocks, growing like tumors in the dark. But something told me that this was just the beginning. "And did your wife discover?" "No." He released a bitter laugh without humor. "She has never suspected anything. To this day, she thinks her sister is holy. She is the best aunt in the world, who is a blessing in her life." A heavy pause. "But her sister, yes." I frowned. "Like this?" "She found she was pregnant." I felt my stomach tighten. His words hovered in the air like toxic smoke. Pregnant. Of the sister of the wife herself. A bastard son. A secret that, if revealed, would destroy not only a marriage but an entire family. "And you? What did you do?" I heard a muffled sound, as if he had his hands on his face, covering his eyes, trying to hide the shame of himself. "I paid her to have an abortion." The voice came out almost inaudible. "I gave the money. I made the clinic. I took her up at dawn at 5 in the morning when it was still dark. No one saw us. I waited outside in the car with the engine on." He took a deep breath. "She came in alone. She left 2 hours later, white like a sheet, no color on her lips, her hands shaking so much that she could barely open the car door." "Did she say something?" "No." A pause. "Just looked at me, with that look." "What look?" "Of hatred. You was, as if I was worse than the devil, as if I had done the worst thing in the world, as if she had just looked at my true face for the first time." Sagar. That his voice was disappearing, disintegrating in pieces. "After that she never came back to our house. He blocked my number, he changed town. My wife asks today why her sister has disappeared, why no longer meet the calls, why not come at the children's birthday parties, why not respond to the messages." He let out a trembling sigh. "I always make an excuse. I say she's busy, who got a new job, who is dating someone and is focused on that. My wife believes. She always believes in me." I was silent, processing. The weight of his fault was tangible, almost physical. I could feel the pain crossing the wooden grid, reaching me like invisible waves. But something in me said it wasn't that yet. It wasn't just that. There was something else. There is always. "And why are you here now?" I asked slowly. "After so long. Why did you decide to confess this today after years of keeping the secret?" I heard his sound moving, maybe leaning forward, approaching the face of the grid. He took a long time to answer. When he finally spoke, the voice was different, lower, colder, as if counting something that happened to someone else, not to him. "Because she came back." My heart hit faster. "It returned?" "Yes." A pause. "It appeared at the door of the house last night, not warning, without calling before. Simply, it appeared. He touched the bell at 8 at night when we were having dinner." He took a deep breath. "My wife was so happy. She opened the door, shouted, hugged her, cried, said she missed so much. The kids ran to hug her aunt. It was a party. Everyone laughing, everyone happy. Silence. Everyone but me. And then, she came in. She sat at the table. He had dinner with us. He talked to the children. He asked about the school, about his friends, about everything. He looked normal, as if nothing had happened. He stopped. But when she looked at me, I saw, what? That she didn't come to make up. His voice came out cold. She came to tell everything. I closed my eyes. I felt the cold sweat run down the back of my neck, down the spine. That was not just a confession. It was a bomb about to explode, a truth that was being held by a thin thread about to break. And you, what do you want to do? He let out a low, bitter laugh with no trace of joy. I don't know, Father. I really don't know. I heard the creak of the wood. He was getting up. The knees crashed. The hands knocked on the confessional door looking for the exit. Wait, he said fast, almost on impulse. You haven't told me everything yet, do you? Silence. A silence so heavy that it seemed to suck the whole air of the confessional. I felt the heavy air between us, as if something invisible was pressing my chest, crushing my lungs. No, priest, he murmured, already opening the door. Not yet. And then, before I could say anything, before I could ask more, before I could hold him, I heard his footsteps walking away, fast, desperate, echoing through the empty ship. I was alone in the confessional for long minutes. His words still echoed in my head, like a cracked bell that kept playing. Each sentence, each pause, each breath. I thought of the mini-story I usually reflect on nights like this. It was late and the church was empty. His broken voice crossed the silence like a hidden scream. It was exactly that, a hidden scream, a silent despair. What he revealed was not intended for me, and yet these words were trapped with me forever. I got up slowly, the heavy legs. Opening the door of the confessional, I looked around. The church was completely empty, only the cold wind entering the cracks in the windows, making the curtains move like lost souls. The candles on the altar were still erased. The crucifix watched me in silence. I walked to the central nave, the steps sounding too loud in the darkness. And that's when I saw it. Gear was in the front seat, where he had probably expected before entering the confessional. There was something. A ticket, folded in half, handwritten, wrinkled paper, as if it had been stored in your pocket for hours, or days, before being left there. I took the paper with trembling fingers. My heart beat so hard that I could hear the blood throbbing in the ears. I opened slowly. The lyrics were trembled, irregular, as if it had been written in a hurry, or with fear. I read the words once, then I read again, because I couldn't believe it. If I don't come back tomorrow, it's because she already told. I didn't sleep that night. I was lying on the bed of the parish house, looking at the cracked ceiling, listening to the wind abroad. The ticket was on the bedside table next to the Bible. I took it several times at dawn, rereading the words to the weak light of the lamp. If I don't come back tomorrow, it's because she already told. Who was he? Why didn't you ask to talk outside the confessional? Why did you leave this note like a farewell? And the question that most haunted me, what else did he not tell me? Because there was something, I was sure, something worse than the case, worse than abortion, worse than the lie sustained for years, something he didn't have the courage to confess. I dawned with deep dark circles and my mouth dry. I celebrated the Mass of the Seven as I always do. The church was almost empty. Only 3 elderly ladies in the first row and a lonely man in the back who came out before communion. I tried to focus on prayers, readings, consecration, but my mind was far away. I was in that confessional, in that broken voice, in those words. After the Mass, I sat in the sacristy to have coffee, the cup shake lightly in my hand. I looked out the window to the courtyard of the church. The sky was gray, loaded, as if it was raining at any moment. And then I heard the door of the church open, quick steps on the ship. My heart accelerated. I got up and went to the entrance. It was him. I immediately recognized by posture, shrugged, curved, head down, hands stuck in the pockets of the dark coat. He was standing before the altar, looking at the crucifix as if he expected Christ to come down from the cross and give him an answer. I approached slowly, the steps echoing in the silence. "Good morning," he said, keeping his voice calm. He turned, and that's when I first saw his face. He was a middle-aged man, perhaps 41 years old, back eyes, surrounded by dark spots, beard to make a few days, the pale face with an expression of those who have not slept for weeks. The clothes were tied, the same shirt yesterday, I realized. There was a dark spot in the wrist, as if he had cleaned something in a hurry. "Father," he murmured, his voice still hoarse. I went back. I nodded. "I came earlier to open the church. I thought maybe you wanted to talk." He looked around, nervous, as if checking if there was someone else. "She hasn't told it yet," he said, almost whispering, "but it's going to tell you." I know it's going. How do you know? He swallowed dry. Because she sent me a message at dawn. He took his cell phone out of his pocket with trembling hands. The screen was cracked in the upper corner. He opened the messaging app and showed me. I shouldn't have looked. Confession is absolute, but something in me needed to understand. The message was short, simple, and devastating. Tomorrow night, I'll tell her, you've been 3 years to do the right thing. Now I'm going to do for you. The message had been sent at 3:47 a.m. I looked at him. Tomorrow night, I repeated. That is, tonight. He nodded, his red eyes as if he had cried, or as if it had not blinked in hours. What do I do, Father? What do I do? I took a deep breath. You need to tell your wife before she counts. He released a bitter laugh without humor. Telling? How? Honey, remember your sister who disappeared 3 years ago? Yeah, I had an affair with her, got her pregnant, and paid an abortion. Is that how I should start? I closed my eyes for a moment. Truth always hurts less when it comes from ourselves, he said, repeating what I learned in my years of priesthood. Lies have shallow roots. Truths hurt, but heal. He looked at me as if I said the most absurd thing in the world. The Lord does not understand, priest. His voice got lower, denser. If she tells you, it's not just the marriage that ends. It's not just the family that destroys itself. He stopped, looking at his own feet. It's much more than that. I felt cold through my spine. What do you mean? Silence. He was shaking. He could see his hands closing and opening nervously, as if they were holding something invisible. Last night after I left here, he stopped. I went to her house. Why did I? My whole body froze. Did you go to the sister-in-law's house? He nodded. She lives alone now. A small apartment on the 4th floor of an old building. I knew where it was because I followed her once, months ago, when she returned to town. His voice was coming out mechanical, as if narrating the story of another P.E. Soa. I touched the bell. She didn't answer. I played again. Nothing. So I waited outside. In the car, parked on the street with the headlights off. Why? He looked at me. Because I needed to talk to her. Convince her not to do that. I begged if necessary. And you said? He shook his head. She left the building around 11 at night. Alone. Black coat and purse. He walked to the corner and got into a taxi. I frowned. And did you follow? He hesitated. Then he nodded. I followed the taxi for 20 minutes. His voice was disappearing. He stopped in front of a restaurant, a discreet place away from the center she entered. I parked across the street and watched. And then, she found someone. My heart accelerated. Who? He took a long time to answer. When he spoke, the voice came out almost inaudible. My wife. I felt like the floor opened under my feet. Your wife? He nodded, his eyes fixed on the floor. They met. The two, alone. They sat at a table at the bottom away from the windows. They talked for almost an hour. His breathing was accelerated now. I stayed outside looking at the glass. I couldn't hear anything, but I saw their expressions. My wife was laughing at first. Then it got serious. Very serious. And then, he stopped. And then, she started to cry. I closed my eyes. That was not just a confession about to explode. It was a tragedy already in motion. A runaway train down the mountain without brakes, no return. And you, what did you do? Nothing. He let out a trembling sigh. I stayed there, standing like a coward. When they left the restaurant, I hid behind a parked car. I saw my wife hug her sister, a long hug. Then each one took a different taxi. He looked up at me, and I came home. When I arrived, my wife was already there, lying on the bed, with her back to the door. I asked if everything was okay. She said yes. She was just tired. A heavy pause. But I know she was pretending, Father. I know the way she breathed, by her silence. I looked at him for long seconds. Do you think your sister has already told everything? He shook his head. No, not yet. If I had told, my wife wouldn't have returned home. I wouldn't have lying in the same bed as me. She would have, I don't know, shouted, expelled, caught the kids and left. He took a deep breath. But she is preparing my wife. She is planting the seeds, creating the scenario. And tonight, his voice failed. Tonight, she will tear everything out of the root. I was silent, processing. There was something strange about it all, something that didn't fit. If the sister-in-law really wanted to destroy him, why wait? Why all this theater? Why this notice? This message at dawn? You said you haven't told me everything yet, I said slowly. I said yesterday before leaving the confessional. He looked at me. What else didn't you tell me? Silence. Such a dense silence that it seemed to suck the air around us. He opened his mouth, closed. It opened again. And then finally he whispered, the baby. I felt my stomach turn. What does the baby have? He was shaking now. The voice came out, as if each word cost a piece of his soul. I said I paid the abortion. I took her to the clinic. She entered and left 2 hours later. He swallowed dry. But I never joined her. I never saw it with my own eyes. My heart began to beat faster. What are you saying? He looked up at me. and at that moment I saw something that made me freeze to the bones. It was not guilty. It was not regret. It was fear. Pure, primitive, absolute fear. I think she never had abortion, Father. His voice came out in a hoarse whisper. I think she had the baby. Silence. And I think my wife will find that tonight. I was paralyzed. The pieces began to fit into my head like a monstrous puzzle. The disappearance of the sister, in-law, the 3 years of silence, the sudden return, the mysterious dinner, the message at dawn. She was not just coming to tell about the case. She was coming to introduce his son. I took a step back, seeking support on the church bank. Are you sure of that? He shook his head. No, but yesterday when she was at my house, I saw her down the hall. She was moving her cell phone, and for a second, the screen turned to me. He stopped. I saw a picture of a child, a boy, dark hair, eyes like mine, your voice breaking it, and under the photo, the name. What name? He looked at me, his eyes full of tears that refused to fall, and then said the name that should not have been said, the name that changed everything. Samuel. The name was suspended in the air like heavy smoke. It wasn't just a name. It was a sentence, a living proof of a sin that should have been erased but grew up, breathed, gained face and hands. I looked at the man in front of me and saw something I had never seen before in all my years of priesthood. It wasn't just guilt. It wasn't just fear. It was the awareness that something he could not control, a life, a secret with heartbeat. Samuel, I repeated slowly, letting the name roll in the tongue. Are you sure it is? My son? He added, his voice bitter. No, I'm not sure of anything. But the eyes, priest, the eyes don't lie. He ran his hand over his face as if he could erase everything from there. He must be about 3 years old now, the age he would have if she had moved on with her pregnancy. I was silent. His words were like stones being stacked in my chest one by one, increasingly heavy. And you never asked? He let out a mood without humor. Ask? How? Hi, sister. In-law. Did you abort or hide my son for 3 years? She blocked me. He stopped. Until now. I walked to the nearest bank and sat down. My legs were weak. The heavy head. I felt like being pulled into something larger, darker, denser than any confession I had ever heard. You said she gave you the money back to the clinic, I said, seeking to fill the holes in the story. So you talked there? He shook his head. No, she got a loan. I stayed in the car, with the engine on, parked on the side street. I waited and waited. Every minute looked an hour. His voice was disappearing. After almost 3 hours, she got out, white, trembling. He got in the car without saying anything. He threw an envelope on my lap. The money? Yes, all the money I gave her, intact. I frowned. Did she return the money? Yes. And you didn't find it strange? He looked at me as if the question was absurd. Father, I was relieved. I thought she had changed my mind. I had given up. Maybe I had the courage to tell my wife and end it all at once. He let out a trembling sigh, but she didn't say anything. He just stood there, looking out the window, her hands on her lap. I left her at home and never saw her again. Until yesterday, I was silent, processing. If she returned the money, it means she didn't use it. And if you didn't use it, what did you do inside the clinic for 3 hours? The answer was obvious. She didn't enter, or entered and left through the back door. Have you ever researched her name? I asked. On social networks? Any public registration? He nodded. I tried. Blocked everything. Facebook, Instagram, everything private or deleted. It's like it has disappeared from the world. And the address? Do you know where she lives now? Yes. I discovered yesterday when I followed it. It is in a simple neighborhood away from the center. An old building, without porter, without cameras. He stopped, looking at his own hands. I thought about going back today. Key on the door. Confront her. Ask directly about the boy. And why didn't you do it? He looked up at me. Because I'm afraid of the answer. Esanden. I felt cold through my spine. There was something in his voice. Something that went beyond the fear of being discovered. It was a more primitive fear. More visceral. As if he knew that when he opened that door, there would be no return. What do you think she'll say? I asked slowly. He swallowed dry. That the boy is mine. A pause. And I tried to kill him. The world seemed to stop. What? He was shaking now. The words came out interspersed, almost inaudible. I didn't want to, Father. I swear to God that I didn't want to. But when she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I thought of everything I was going to lose. My family, my wife, my children, my reputation. His voice was breaking. I said horrible things to her. He said she had to solve that couldn't let it exist. That would be better for everyone if it just disappeared. I closed my eyes. You asked her to abort. Yes. A heavy pause. But she refused at first. He said she couldn't. She didn't matter what I said. She was going to have the baby. She was going to tell everyone. That was going to destroy my life. He took a deep breath. And that's when I threatened. I felt my stomach turn. What do you mean, did you threaten? He did not respond immediately. He stood there looking at the floor as if the words were too heavy to leave. When he finally spoke, the voice was almost a whisper. He said that if she didn't abort, I would make her regret. He said he knew people who could do things happen. She didn't want to test me. My heart was hitting hard now. Did you threaten you with death? No. He raised his eyes. Worse. I threatened the baby. I felt like they had punched me in the stomach. He said that if she had that son, he wouldn't grow. What accidents happen? What children die all the time? That would be a tragedy, of course, but things like that happen. His hands were shaking so much that he had to hold them together. I wasn't serious, Father. I swear I wasn't. I was just desperate. I wanted to scare her, making her give up. He took a deep breath, and it worked. I was paralyzed. His words echoed in my head like funeral bells. He had threatened his own child, your own son, not directly, but with careful, calculated words, designed to plant the most primitive fear in a mother's heart. Was it after that she agreed with abortion? He nodded. The next day she called me. He said he was going to do it, that I should get the money and mark the clinic, that I wanted to end it as soon as possible. His voice was disappearing, and I did it. I marked everything. I paid advanced. I took her there. He stopped. But now I think she never got into that clinic. I got up slowly. My mind was spinning, trying to fit all the pieces. If she didn't have an abortion, it means she had the baby in secret, hid the pregnancy, changed city. He raised the child alone for 3 years. And now, I was coming back, not to take revenge, but to present the living proof of what he had done. Do you understand what this means? I asked, the voice coming out harder than I wanted. He looked at me, his red eyes. That she will show the boy to my wife. He will tell everything, and he will use my own words against me. He swallowed dry. It will say that I threatened to kill my own son. I was silent, processing. He was right. If the sister-in-law really had recordings, messages, any proof of his threats, it wouldn't just be the end of the marriage. It would be the end of everything. Are you sure she has proof? He took a long time to answer. When he spoke, the voice came out cold. I have. How do you know? He took his cell phone out of his pocket again, opened the email app. It rolled until you find a specific message, and showed me. The message had been sent this morning, at 6:23 a.m. The sender was an address that I did not recognize, but the subject was clear. Do you remember what you said? And inside the email, there was an audio file. He squeezed the play. The recording was of poor quality, but you could hear. It was his voice. Younger maybe, but unmistakable. If you have this child, it won't grow. Accidents happen. Children die all the time. Then her voice, tremendous, crying. Are you threatening my baby? I'm saying you need to think about what you're doing. That's it. The recording cut. Absolute silence. I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of it crush me. It was not just a confession. It was a condemnation. A recorded test. Filed. Kept for 3 years like a bomb waiting to explode. She recorded everything, I muttered. He nodded, turning off his cell phone. And tonight, we'll show this to my wife. His voice was broken. It's not just the case, priest. It's not just the bastard son, that's it. It's the threat. It's the monster I have become. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw tears dripping down his face. What do I do? What do I do? I was silent, because for the first time in all my years of priesthood, I had no answer. There was no penance for that. There was no forgiveness to erase those words. They were recorded, archived, immortalized, and tonight would be revealed. But then he said something that made my blood freeze. Father, I need to tell you the worst part. I looked at him. The worst part? He nodded, clearing his tears with his back. Last night, after I saw my wife cry at the restaurant, after I came home and found her lying down pretending to sleep, he stopped. I left home again. I felt my heart accelerate. Where did you go? He swallowed dry. I went back to the pre-her. Silence. And this time, I entered. And this time, I entered. His words were suspended in the air as a death sentence. I felt my whole body freeze. The legs were heavy. The breath stuck in the chest. Did you enter her building? I repeated, having to confirm that he had heard correctly. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the floor. The entrance door was open. Someone had forgotten to close, or broken the lock. I don't know, but it was open. His voice was mechanical now, as if narrating a movie he watched, not something he lived. I climbed the stairs, 4 floors. Each step ranges under my feet. The hall was dark, just a lamp in the end, flashing. Her door was the second left. He stopped. Number 42. I closed my eyes, trying to sue. He had gone to her house, in the middle of the night, alone, while his wife slept at home, unconscious that her husband was a few meters from destroying everything. So? I asked, the voice coming out lower than I intended. He swallowed dry. I stood in front of the door for, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, maybe more, just looking at the number, for the bell. He took a deep breath. There was light inside. I could see the crack under the door, and there was sound. Low music, something childish, of those lullies. My stomach turned around. The child was inside. Samuel. What did you do? I asked, almost whispering. He did not respond immediately. He stood there, shaking, as if the words were glass in his throat. When he finally spoke, his voice broke out. I touched the bell. Silence. Once. Twice. No one answered, but I knew she was there. I could feel. He stopped. So I knocked on the door, strong, with the side of my fist, and I shouted her name. His breathing was accelerated now. Nothing. Absolute silence. The song stopped. Light remained lit, but no sound, as if the whole house had arrested the breath. I felt the cold sweat drain on my neck. And you left? He shook his head. No. A heavy pause. I tried the doorknob. My heart stopped. It was locked, but it was an old, weak lock, the kind anyone could force with a little strength. He raised his eyes to me, and what I saw there made me freeze to the bones. It was not regret. It was pure confession. I forced the door, priest. I felt as if the world had stopped spinning. Did you invaded her house? He nodded slowly. The lock gave in to the third push. The door opened. I entered. His voice was disappearing, disintegrating in pieces. The apartment was small. Living room, kitchen, a bedroom. All simple. Old furniture. Smell of child food. It had toys scattered on the floor. Carts, mounting blocks. A teddy bear dropped near the couch. He stopped, taking a deep breath. And then I saw it. What? The bedroom door. Ajar. With light on. He swallowed dry. I approached, slowly. Each step seemed to echo around the whole house. And when I looked inside, he stopped, his hands shaking so much that he had to hold them together. She was there, sitting on the bed, with the boy on her lap. My heart fired. Samuel. He was sleeping. His voice came out in a hoarse whisper, head resting on her shoulder, his eyes closed. Calm breath. He wore a blue pajama with stars. The hair was dark, just like mine. And his hands. His hands were small, perfect, clinging on her shirt. He took a deep breath, and she looked at me, not afraid, not surprisingly. She looked like, as if waiting. I was paralyzed. What did she say? He took a long time to answer. When it spoke, it was almost inaudible. She said, "You took it." I felt cold through my spine. Her words had a different weight. It was not confrontation. It was not a challenge. It was acceptance, as if it was all part of a script already written. And you? What did you answer? He released a bitter laugh without humor. Nothing. I stayed there, standing at the door, looking at her. For the boy. For the small room full of children's designs on the wall. There was a crib in the corner already too small. A pile of diaper on the dresser. A picture of her with the still newborn, nailed to the wall. His voice was breaking. And then she said something that destroyed everything. What did she say? He looked up at me, tears running down his face. She said, "Do you want to hold it?" Absolute silence. I didn't understand at first. I thought it was a trap, a test, but she was serious. He got up slowly, holding on the boy in his arms, and walked to me. He took a deep breath, and he extended me. I closed my eyes. The scene was unfolding in my head like a movie. He stopped at the door. She, extending the child, his son, the living secret. Did you get it? He nodded slowly. Yes. His voice was disappearing. I took him in my arms, and he was so light, Father, so small. He could feel his breath against my chest, his heart beating. The little hands relaxed. He stopped, and at that moment, I knew. I knew what. He looked at me, his red eyes destroyed, that he was mine, that there was no doubt, that everything I had done to erase that had failed, because he was there, live, real, breathing in my arms. He took a deep breath, and then she said something that made me drop the boy back in her arms and run out of that place. My heart accelerated. What? He swallowed dry. She said, "He asks for you." Silence. Asks for the father. I show you pictures, taken from Facebook, your company, from public events. I say that the father is traveling. That will come back one day. That will meet him. His voice was broken now. And tonight, priest, he'll meet. I felt the world collapse. Will she take the boy? He nodded. It will appear in my house, with Samuel, in front of my wife, from my daughters, and will tell everything, the case, the pregnancy, the threats, and will show the living proof of everything I did. He was crying now, sobbing, hands on his face. My life ends today, Father. My family, my marriage, all. I was silent, processing. There were no words. There was no consolation. Only the overwhelming weight of the truth approaching like a runaway train. But then he said something that made my blood freeze. But that's not the worst, priest. I looked at him, unable to imagine what could be worse. It is not? He shook his head, cleaning his tears. No, he swallowed dry. The worst is that, when I held the boy in my arms, when I looked at his face, he stopped. I thought about doing what I threatened 3 years ago. The The world stopped. What? He was shaking now, his voice coming out desperate. For a second, priest, for just a second, I thought of squeezing, to hold him too strong, in making an accident seem, an accidental suffocation, a tragedy. His voice was breaking, and no one would know. It would just be another child who died sleeping, another statistics. He looked up at me, destroyed, and I could continue my life. My wife would never know. My secret would die with him. I felt nausea rising by the throat. But you didn't do that. He shook his head, crying. No, I didn't do it. Because when I looked at his face, to my eyes closed, to my little hands holding my shirt, he sobbed. I saw my daughter. I saw my oldest daughter's face as a baby, the same mouth, the same nose, and I couldn't. He was destroyed now. I handed him back. I ran out. I went down the stairs without looking back, and when I arrived in the car, I vomited on the sidewalk. I was silent for long minutes. His words echoed in my head like funeral bells. He had thought of killing his own son, not just threatened, not just spoken, had held the child in his arms and considered, and now, this confession was among us, between him, God, and me. What are you going to do now? I asked finally. He looked up at me. I don't know. I thought of running away, take the car and disappear, but where, and how long? He took a deep breath. Or I could go to the police station, tell us all, deliver me before she delivered me. He stopped. But that means prison. It means losing everything anyway. His voice was disappearing. Or I can wait for her to arrive tonight, and letting everything go down. I looked at him for long seconds. Are you asking me for permission or advice? He looked at me, destroyed. I don't know, Father. I just know that I need to tell someone to tell someone. I need someone to know before it's too late. I was silent, and then he said something that made everything get even worse. There's one last thing I need to tell you. I looked at him, feeling the weight of the sentence. Is there more? He nodded, his voice coming out in a cold whisper. Yes, and it's the worst of all. He swallowed dry. When I left her apartment yesterday, when I got off the stairs and arrived in the car, he stopped. She sent me your message. My heart accelerated. What did you say? He took his cell phone out of his pocket with trembling hands, opened the message, and showed me. The words on the screen made me freeze to the bones. If you don't tell her until 8 at night, I tell you, and I bring Samuel with me, and the police too. If you don't tell her until 8 at night, I tell you, and I bring Samuel with me, and the police too. The words on his cell phone screen seemed to be throbbing, alive, as if they had their own heartbeat. I looked at the message, then for him, and I saw a man completely destroyed, emptied, as if every confession had ripped a piece of his soul. 8 of the night, I repeated slowly. What time is it now? He looked at the wristwatch, his hand still shaking. Noon and 15. I did the math mentally. It was less than 8 hours left. 8 hours to decide how to destroy your own life. He kept his cell phone in his pocket and stood there in the middle of the empty ship, looking at the altar, for the crucifix, for the candles off, as if he expected God to come down from heaven and give him an answer, a sign, a way out. But God, as always, remained silent, and in that silence, I realized something that haunts me to this day. There are confessions that do not seek forgiveness. They seek only witnesses, someone who knows, someone who carries the weight along, even if they can't do anything. And I had become this witness. What do I do, Father? He asked, his voice broken, desperate. What do I do? I took a deep breath. During all my years of priesthood, I always had an answer. There has always been a penance, a prayer, a path to redemption, 10 Hail Marys, a fast, a alms, words that calm down, which promised that God forgave everything. But at that moment, looking at that man, I had nothing, because there was no penance to erase that. There was no forgiveness, that it would stop the recorded threats. There was no prayer that resurrected the confidence that would be destroyed tonight. You need to tell the truth, he said finally. The words came out with difficulty, as if my own throat refused to pronounce them. He released a bitter laugh without humor. The truth? What truth, Father? What was my wife with her own sister? What did I get pregnant? What did I threaten to kill my own son? I broke into her house yesterday and held the boy in my arms thinking of, his voice failed. He couldn't finish the sentence. Did not need. We both knew what he had thought at that moment, what I had considered. The weight of that thought was visible on his face, like a scar that would never disappear. Yes, I said firmly, the whole truth. Before she tells you, he shook his head, crying. My wife won't forgive me. My daughters will hate me. I will lose everything. Everything I built in 15 years of marriage will collapse one night. You've lost, he said, and the words came out hard than he intended. By the time you made those threats, you had already lost. By the time you chose the secret instead of the truth, you sealed your own destination. Now, the only choice left is how you will face it. I paused. Like a coward or like a man? Silence. He stayed there, stopped, suing. The tears ran down his face, but he didn't clean them. He just dropped one by one, wetting the stone floor of the church. He could hear his breath, heavy, irregular, as if every inspiration cost a huge effort. "I am not a man, priest," he whispered. "I am not. A man would not do what I did." "No," I agreed, "but a man faces the consequences. A man looks into his wife's eyes and tells the truth even though he knows he will destroy everything. A man assumes responsibility for his child, even if it means losing everything." He shook his head, as if he didn't believe he was capable. "What if I run away? What if I just disappear?" I looked at him for long seconds. "You can escape," I said slowly. "You can get the car and drive away. You can change town, name, life. But what happens when your wife finds out anyway? When the police knock on your door? When your daughters grow up and search your name online? When Samuel one day decides to look for the father?" I paused. "Where will you escape? Where exactly? Who are you running away from?" He didn't answer. He just stayed there looking at the floor, his shoulders bent, his weight crushing him like an invisible tombstone. He could see his hands shaking, the knees almost yielding, the whole body bowing under the weight of guilt. "I wanted to go back in time," he murmured, almost to himself. "I never wanted to have to that, never looked at her like that, never have touched, never betrayed, never have threatened, never have." He stopped. "But it doesn't, right? There's no turning back. Time is just going forward, and every choice we make is recorded forever." "No," I agreed. "There is no return." I was silent for a moment, seeking the right words. "But you have a choice. Always have a choice. You can choose how it ends. You can't change the past, but you can decide who you'll be in the next few minutes, in the next few hours. And this choice, it's the only thing that is still in your hands." He looked up at me, and last time, I saw something different on that face. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was acceptance, resignation, as if I had finally understood that there was no way out, just different paths to the same destination. "Thank you, Father," he said, his voice low. He reached out. I squeezed it. His palm was cold, sweaty, shaking slightly. I held firm for a few seconds, as if it could convey something, strength, courage, hope, through that touch. But I knew it was no use. He had already made his decision. I could see in his eyes, for listening, for being here, for not judging me. "It's not me who judges," I said. "I never went." He nodded, releasing my hand. "Go with God," he said, even though he knew the words sounded empty. He turned to the door. He walked slowly through the central nave, the steps echoing in silence as drum beating. Each step seemed to cost immense effort, as if walking against the wind. When he arrived at the entrance, he stopped for a moment. He looked back, to the altar, for the crucifix, for me, as if saying goodbye. Not for me, but everything. And then it came out. The church door closed behind him with a dry, finished sound, which echoed through the empty ship, and I was alone. The following hours were the longest of my life. I tried to focus on the tasks of the day, attending faithful who came to seek comfort for their small afflictions, organize the record books in the sacristy, prepare the afternoon mass, read the breviary, the prayers of the day. But my mind was stuck in that confession, in those words, in that man, in that 3-year-old boy named Samuel who didn't even know his father had thought of killing him. Each time he looked at the clock, he felt his stomach tighten. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2, 3. Time dragged itself as if dived into molasses. And the question didn't go out of my head. What was he going to do? Would you tell your wife? Are you going to sit on the dinner table, look into her eyes, and confess everything before her sister appeared with Samuel in her arms? Or was going to run away, pick up the car, rush and disappear on the highway before 8 at night? Or would you just wait, sitting on the couch, watching television, pretending everything was normal, while the clock inexorably advanced to the ultimatum? At 5:30 in the afternoon, I received a call. He was an elderly woman, Donna Marta, asking me to visit her husband at the hospital. He had worsened. They wanted the extreme utterance. Usually I would have gone immediately, but that day I hesitated. I looked at the clock. It was 2.5 hours to go. I stood there, holding the phone, divided between the pastoral duty and the inexplicable need to be close, to know, to witness, even if at a distance, what was going to happen. But then I took a deep breath and said yes. That would be there in 20 minutes, because there was nothing I could do, could not interfere. I couldn't call him. He couldn't appear at his house. The confidentiality of confession is absolute, and I had to trust that God was somehow taking care of it, even if I didn't understand how. I returned to the church at 7:15 at night, 45 minutes before the ultimatum. I entered the side door without lighting the lights. The ship was immersed in darkness, only the weak light of the perpetual candles on the altar illuminating the crucifix. I sat on the first bank and prayed, not by the decorated words of the breviary, but with my own words. Raw, honest, desperate words. Sir, I don't know what's going on now. I don't know what he's going to do, but I ask you, protect the innocent. Protect his wife, the daughters, and Samuel. That boy didn't ask to be born in the middle of it all. He doesn't deserve to carry the weight of his father's sins. I stayed there, head down, listening only to the wind outside and hitting my own heart. At 8 o'clock at point, I heard the tower clock hit. 8 slow, heavy chips like funeral bells. Each echoed through the empty church, reverberating on the stone walls, spreading through silence. And then, it stopped. Absolute silence. I closed my eyes, and I said not for him, but for all who were going to suffer in the next few hours. By the wife who was going to discover the betrayal, by the daughters who were going to see their father collapse, for the sister-in-law who carried that secret alone for 3 years, and by Samuel, a 3-year-old boy who would somehow find that his father had thought of killing him before he even met him. I was sitting there until 9 at night, until 10, until midnight, waiting for something. A phone call, a knock on the door, sirens on the street, last-minute news on your cell phone, anything that told me what had happened. But nothing came, just silence. The same silence that fills this church every night after everyone leaves. The same silence that is between the words of the confessions. The same silence I carry with me since that night, because he never came back. Not the next day, not even the following week, never again. And for days, I was unknowingly, no news, no answers, only the weight of that confession crushing my chest, keeping me from sleeping, making me wonder if I had said the right words, if I had done enough. 3 days later, I read news in the local newspaper. I was having coffee at the parish house, still in a robe when I opened the newspaper in the police section. Usually, I jump this section. I don't like to start the day with tragedies and crimes, but that morning something made me look, and there it was, brief, almost unnoticed, a small paragraph, no photo, without highlight. 43-year-old man found dead in a car accident on the state highway, KM 87. Vehicle overturned after leaving the track at high speed. Police investigate causes. There were no signs of braking. There was no name. There was no address. There was no photo. But I knew. Deep down, I always knew how I was going to end. My hand trembled holding the newspaper. I read the paragraph again, and again, and again. There were no signs of braking. That meant he didn't try to stop, did not try to avoid. Simply, let it happen. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of nausea climbing through the throat. He had chosen. Not the confession. I don't escape it. But the definitive output, the dark road, the throttle at the bottom, the steering wheel loose in the hands, and then, nothing. I was sitting there for long minutes, unable to move. His words echoed in my head, mixed with the creak of the confessional, with the sound of his breath, with the heavy silence that was after it came out. I am not a man, Father. I am not. And maybe he was right. Perhaps in the end, he could not be the man he needed to be. He didn't have the courage to face. He had no strength to confess. Then he chose to disappear, not just physically, but completely, taking the secret with you. I didn't go to the funeral. I couldn't. The confidentiality of confession is absolute. Even after death, I didn't know that man officially, not outside the confessional. I only saw him once that morning when he returned to church, but in the following weeks I was aware. I read the obituaries every day. I researched names discreetly. I asked some faithful if they knew any family who had recently lost someone, and I found out. He had left a wife, Carolina, 2 daughters, Laura and Sophia, 9 and 6 years old, a house in the suburb, in a quiet neighborhood, with garden in front and balance in the backyard, a job in an accounting company where it was considered reliable, dedicated, an exemplary operation, and apparently, no scandal, no public revelation, no mention of a child named Samuel, no story about a forbidden case, no destroyed sister-in-law, nothing. So the sister-in-law never told? Or did you tell? But did the family have decided to bury the secret with him? Or was the ultimatum just an empty threat? Does a way to torture him to make him suffer without ever having the real intention to destroy everything? I don't know, and I will never know. Because this is the curse of the confessional. You hear the full stories, but you never see the true ending. The words get stuck in you, echoing forever, but the rest is in the dark. And sometimes the dark is worse than any truth. And a month later, I saw his wife. It was on Sunday morning, during the 10 Mass. I was celebrating the consecration when I looked at the congregation and 6, sitting in the middle, on the left side with the 2 daughters, dressed in black. The woman had back eyes, surrounded by dark spots, the pale face, her hands holding her daughters firmly as if she was afraid they would disappear too. The girls looked at the altar with that empty expression that children have when they do not completely understand what they lost. But the emptiness. I finished the mass in the automatic. When I gave the final blessing and the faithful started to leave, she stayed. He waited until everyone came out, and then it approached. "Father," she said, her voice low. The daughters were by her side, holding her mother's hand. "Good morning," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Can I help with something?" She hesitated. "My husband, he died a month ago." I nodded, expressing condolences that I learned to give over the years. "I'm sorry for your loss." She looked at her daughters, then back to me. He came here? In this church?" My heart accelerated. "Sometimes, yes. Many people have been seeking peace." She nodded, her teary eyes. I just wanted to know if he was okay in the last days before the accident." Swallowed dry. He looked disturbed. I looked at her, for the daughters, for those innocent faces who would never know the complete truth, and lied. "He looked alone," he said softly. It looked like someone who had made up with oneself. She let out a trembling sigh, as if that were the comfort she needed. "Thank you, priest." And then it came out, with the daughters, leaving me alone in the empty church carrying another weight, the weight of the godly lie. And sometimes I wonder about Samuel. Where is he now? Who created him? His mother still lives in that small apartment on the 4th floor of the old building? Or changed city again, taking the boy away from all this? Does he know that his father died? Or his mother invented another story? Did you say the father was a hero who died in a tragic accident? A good man who would have loved him if he had the chance? Or did you tell the truth, that his father was a coward who threatened him even before he was born, who held him in his arms and thought to tighten, who chose death instead of facing it? I don't know, and maybe it's better that way, because there are truths that destroy more than they save. There are questions that have no answer. There are secrets that are never revealed. There are confessions that die in the confessional, but they live forever in those who heard them. And I carry this one, every day, every night. When I close my eyes, I still see that ticket folded on the church bench. If I don't come back tomorrow, it's because she already told. He didn't come back, but it was not because she told. It was because he chose not to come back, chose the definitive escape, the dark road at 3 a.m, the car at high speed, the loose steering wheel, and then the silence, the final silence that ends all the questions. I did you on today. When I close the church every night, I pass the confessional. I look at the old wooden door, spend for time, to the cracked grid where so many voices whispered their sins, to the bench where he sat that night, tremendous, destroyed, carrying a secret that was too heavy. And I think of the mini-history that reflects it all. It was late and the church was empty. His broken voice crossed the silence like a hidden scream. I can still hear that voice, hoarse, desperate, loaded with guilt and fear, the way the son's name said, Samuel, with that tone of those who speak of something that should have been erased, but insists on existing. What revealed was not intended for me, and yet these words were trapped with me forever. And it's true, those words never left me. They are here, now, while I narrate it. They are with me when I celebrate masses and see families sitting together in the banks, when I hear other confessions of adultery, betrayal, lies, when I see parents playing with young children in the church's courtyard on Sundays. Because some confessions should not have been heard, some truths are too heavy to be loaded, and that definitely should not have come to my ears. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like if he had done it differently, if he had sat at the dinner table with his wife before 8 at night and told everything, word by word, secret by secret, confession by confession. Yes, the marriage would be over. Yes, the daughters would have suffered. Yes, his life would have collapsed, but he would still be alive. Samuel would have a father, even if it was an imperfect father, flawed, full of errors, but alive. And perhaps over time there could be some kind of redemption, some kind of cure, but he didn't choose it. He chose the silence, the disappearance, the escape that has no return. Arasam, and now, I carry that. Every confession I hear, every secret whispered through the confessional grid, every broken voice asking for forgiveness, it all reminds me of him. It reminds me that there are limits to what we can carry, that there are secrets that destroy us from the inside out, that there are choices that we cannot undo, and that sometimes the weight of Si Ulpa is greater than the courage to face. I try not to judge, I just try to listen. Offer God's forgiveness even when I do not understand how God can forgive certain things. But the truth is that I am also human, and I carry my own doubts, my own questions, my own weight. That night, after he last came out, I closed the confessional door. I locked the church. I returned to the parish house, and I cried, not for him, but for all of us, for all we carry secrets that should not exist, for all we make choices that we cannot undo, for all we live with the weight of unposed words, hidden truths, sustained lies, and for the loneliness that comes from knowing something that can never be shared. because the confessional is a lonely place, for those who confess, and for those who hear. But the words still chase me to this day, and they will chase me to the end, because some confessions do not die, they just wait, in the dark, in silence, somewhere between what has been said and what will never be revealed, between the truth and the secret, between guilt and forgiveness, between life and death. And this confession should never have been heard, but it was, and now it's too late to forget, too late to erase, too late to pretend it didn't happen. So, I carry, as an invisible burden, like a cross that no one else can see. And every night when I close the church I look at that confessional, and I think of him, in the man who entered trembling and destroyed, in the 3-year-old boy who never met his father, in the wife who never knew the complete truth, in daughters who will grow without understanding why the father is gone, and in the words that were stuck in me, forever. This confession should not have been heard, but your words still reset in my mind, today, tomorrow, and every day that will still come.